As we mentioned in previous videos, Ikigai Studios wants to be a studio where we will be trying to make original content and hopefully an anime in the future. While we are no doubt grateful for the support and sudden influx of people who want to see more of Girls on Panzer or similar content, at the moment we want to avoid establishing ourselves as that type of channel. We'll be making those type of videos, that's something I can assure you all. But to make the message clear in a way, we wanted to make this 3-part series to not only make our stance as a studio transparent, but also hopefully, in good faith, showcase what we wanted to develop ourselves into as a studio. And as 3 guys who are just super ambitious in trying to create something we love. So to continue and end off on this introduction, I, as well as our 2 other staff members in the rest of this 2-part series, will be talking about a project that we had in mind for a very long time. Specifically, I'm going to be trying to talk about this project in a writer's and director's sense, so this is more something to listen to or learn from rather than being entertaining. If it does turn out to be something fun or cool to watch, then holy crap, I've underestimated this video. But of all, I just thought I'd relay the sentiment. So without further ado, let's begin. Project L.A.M.B, our first project, our first anime, made by our studio. It's a project that we really want to pursue given how it's inspired by games and shows we played and watched with friends. And so begins our journey. In this 3-part series, we're going to showcase aspects of our studio, go into the inner workings of how we plan on making this anime in the future, and get into the broad strokes of what we do: writing, editing, and music. That said, Project L.A.M.B, in our minds at least, is going to utilize a lot of characters, fictional mechanics, and world building. So we're going to start off relatively small and simple. Characters and fictional mechanics go very deep into development, nonsensical topics, and of course designs, all of which we do not have. So that leaves us with world building. But depending on how far we go, world building showcases complex types of cultures, histories, geographies, and politics, which we do not have the time nor energy to relay. That means, as I said before, we have to start small. A neighborhood is perhaps the best place to talk about first, because it's so simple, but can say a lot about where our characters start in the story. You might notice that a lot of anime that take place in real settings start small with their locations. Not all anime, of course, but many. In a school classroom, in a room in their house, or even a location nearby, such as a street or a park. The reason for this is because it grounds the viewer in an instantly familiar area. From there, that does everything. It relays where characters begin, how that might change drastically as the story progresses, showcases a familiar area that a viewer can instantly immerse in, and creates a sense of normalcy to either break or maintain in the future. Because of its simple concept, it's flexible enough to progress from there into whatever normal or crazy plot the anime wants to tell, but it also is grounded enough to allow viewers to not be blown away by whatever premise comes up. So Project L.A.M.B, a premise similar to shows like Ruby or My Hero Academia, but with underlying stories like A Silent Voice or Violet Evergarden, starts with a neighborhood. We have 4 main leads, each with their own stories, values, and skill sets. I won't be talking about them here, but I will go into their homes and lives a tad bit. So, in any case, let's begin, shall we? Of the places we're going to begin, our story starts in the suburbs, commercial district, and downtown areas of our neighborhood. The suburbs is a good place to start, since half of our main cast lives in this part of town. As a team, we decided that taking inspiration from anime might be really cool here, and used a real neighborhood as a basis. Specifically, suburban Nagoya. Generally though, while we are taking inspiration from Nagoya, I think it's also interesting to try to deviate from that a little to give it a little bit of a unique, fresh look. I think if we spread our buildings a little bit, it gives us some breathing room for a more homely and welcoming feeling, something that will help ease the viewer into our story. Additionally, our neighborhood isn't as bustling as Nagoya and is more on the quaint side, so fewer active cars, more greenery and openness will also help this peaceful and natural vibe. This also helps aid a viewer in understanding the day-to-day lives of our characters. Speaking of which, let's take a specific look at 2 of these houses in our suburban neighborhood. Asher lives in quite the large generational family and is the eldest son of the new generation. He has many cousins and siblings to take care of and takes his role seriously as a role model and enthusiastic worker for his family. In his room, found at the top floor of the house in the attic, he'll have many figurines, toys, and shelves with video games, indicating a love for entertainment culture. Additionally, he also has fake toy weapons around, such as a huge sword and pistol, showcasing an avid taste for armament and being a hero-like figure. Outlining a fun, naive, but responsible character, our friend also has a small chameleon for a pet, which he needs a keen eye and affection for to take care of such an animal. Outside his room, many of his other family members can be found, busying themselves or playing around depending on their age. A large kitchen and living room are sported to support this family, but the rather small dining room indicates more of a use for small family gatherings or studying. In their garage, our character's father busies themselves in a workshop, carving up wood, tinkering with metals, and hammering on sheets and plates. As such, looking up to an artisan of a father, Asher will be carrying on an enduring yet passionate will. Outside, there are many other areas to visit. Down the street, just a few blocks away, is a park to let his younger family members play around with each other and the local kids. As such, our character has gotten used to children and earned a small reputation for being a kid-friendly yet competitive lad. When his relatives need something or the newest game of Fist Fairy comes out, shops in the neighborhood are no more than a few blocks down the street. And while the exciting life of being a hero is evident in our character, there's no denying that for him, there's no better place than home. That said, however, there are other characters, and if we move past the train tracks, someone further away, albeit still close enough to perhaps cross paths at one point, calls one of those houses home. For our circumstances, his name will be known as Mavis, an only child in a loving family. His bedroom is fairly similar to our previous character, but with less figurines and games. So while definitely a fan of similar franchises and characters, perhaps his focus is laid elsewhere. Looking around his room, you might find a desk of textbooks, practice exams, and notebooks. That's probably where the rest of that focus is being poured into, and indicates a determined and thoughtful, if not studious, mindset. Along with that, a jacket being hung from the doorknob shows both a small aspect of casual fashion and an occasional to frequent perusing outside for a jog or errands. Some weights and toy swords showcase his more physical ambition to practice and train, yet, as they are few in number, and the fact that they are toy weapons, perhaps this also gives a sense of young naivete and justice. Along with that, areas like the commercial district and park are a tad bit further away, especially as he has to cross 2 train tracks to reach the area. So while occasional walks to shops and stores are apparent, there are definitely more places to jog to, and those are places he might not visit as often. One of these places, as I mentioned before, includes the park, a moderately large patch of grass providing benches for rest, walkways for morning jogs or walks, and of course, a playground for children. Additionally, considering its proximity to the train station, it's only natural to pass through this recreational area. With that, many will pass by each other, as people leaving and entering the nearby train station often bump into each other. Perhaps of all, this centerpiece of our neighborhood is representative of the ambitions to come. After all, if they each share a strong goal, people, even if they come from different walks of life, converge towards such a focal point. In some ways, our park will relay that sentiment in a subtle yet delicate way. And if and when our story continues, who knows? Perhaps the dream of our characters will become a reality. Perhaps they will be able to pick each other up if one falls. Perhaps the friendships we make, ones that last lifetimes, can start with such a simple thing. Some simple things, of course, being found in a park. We've talked enough about the suburbs. Let's take a look at our commercial district. As mentioned, shops, cafes, and stores line the streets, from candy stores to electronic departments to tea shops. A wide array of goods and services are centered in this area. After all, not only does the community need a nearby place to buy groceries and new shoes, but some will even make their livelihoods here. So, some families do in fact live in the commercial district. One of those households invites us to introduce another main lead. Lucien lives in a tea shop with a strict business sense yet caring mother and a jolly but not as bright father. His home, and subsequently house, is behind and above the shop. Within his room, you'll find messily stacked books, a laptop, a bed poorly organized. Our character here reveals a lazy yet smart aesthetic. Additionally, things like clothes and other items litter the room, though in a way that relays an attempt, though half-assed, to organize in an order within chaos manner. While this further informs us of our character as somewhat lazy and low on energy, it also indicates a persona that, at the very least, cares somewhat. Along with that, unlike the others, he appears to not leave his room often, showcasing someone who might not be as physically fit or an outdoorsy person. And while seldom in comparison, he does also possess video games and figures. Finally, within this room, he does have different articles of clothing, such as a hat, scarf, and coat sprawn about, though the apron hung by the door relays a different practical use. Below is a small yet peaceful cafe where our character will sometimes help the business as a tea shop server, and showcases possible skills in communicating, interacting with people, and hospitality, despite his more low-energy side. Along with that, perhaps he knows a thing or two about tea or cooking. Outside the commercial district, while not tiny, the roads are not huge either, once again hammering the idea of a peaceful and quaint neighborhood. And if anything, it's at times more common for errands to be run via walking or bikes. Biking especially appears predominant, with roads and lots specifically outlined for bikes. So it's no surprise that this area, and many parts of downtown, were inspired by Amsterdam. In any case, some shops are set side by side, though others are more separated, creating small alleyways and paths throughout the district. In future scenes and scenarios, this might lead to dynamic interactions between characters and settings within this commercial district. Along with that, we hope to make interesting design choices for walking apparent, such as bridges or tunnels that lead back into the suburbs or towards the downtown area across the river. While people could use the traditional bridges built for cars to bike or walk across, there are other aspects and avenues, such as a tunnel and bridge underneath, to facilitate more people walking and biking both safely and quickly. Crossing the bridge will lead to downtown. Here, we will see many apartment complexes, townhouses, and shops, and as before, inspired by Amsterdam. On the other side of this area, our last main character lives alone in an apartment. Dark and shadowy in some areas, relays a more solemn and isolated tone, but the sunlight does pour into the window along with other warm sources of light. Playing with lighting here attempts to invert this darkness as well, hoping to foreshadow conflicts and resolutions concerning this character. Additionally, the apartment is much more minimalist in comparison to the others, such as a small boiler for cooking, a modest desk with a few books and notebooks, a blanket and a futon, and a closet being some of the few things in this apartment. While minimalist, the apartment does show signs of organization as well, with more open space, folded clothes, and stashed away snacks or utensils. An open window shows both an appreciation for the outdoors, yet a seclusion from the outside. Let us return to the center point of this neighborhood to take note of our last destination for today, the train station. As with many shows and books, this is a place representative of change and new journeys, and much like a park, the train station showcases the comings and goings of people, and with such rapid movements and dynamics, it is here where characters will meet and converge towards each other, even more so than the park. It is a place that will physically and mentally move them into new beginnings and the start of a wide overarching story. While the future is far and the story even unfinished, our characters will evolve from this point, being able to grow into able heroes, travel to places they could only ever see in pictures or fantastical games, and meet a wide array of people. The train station will be simple in design, showcasing their humble, mundane, and even tragic beginnings, and showcasing at the end how far they will go as individuals. This is where our story starts. We don't have the pieces yet to tell our full story, nor is the full story complete, but we all start somewhere, each with different lives, cultures, and personalities. This is why we want to talk about this setting and begin at this setting. A feeling of home, a feeling of beginning, a feeling of past regrets, and a feeling of escape and questions. For as simple and small as the setting of a neighborhood is, I wanted to emphasize these feelings to try to touch as many as I can with this start, not only to contextualize our story, but to also connect with those who might feel similar things to these characters. Doing this mini-series, I realized that there's so much more that needs to be talked about when making a series, including in world building. Yes, I want to and will create countries and continents, cultures and politics, all those things that many usually associate with world building. Yet, I felt that this particular aspect needs to be talked about, how world building will contextualize our characters' personas and histories, not as an aspect that is the result of a narrative's history, politics, or geography per se, but relay the small things, their habits, their likes and dislikes, their motivations, and their relationships. And by doing so, I hope to connect these characters to the world, to the story, and of course, to the audience. Through this, I hope to not only showcase a distant future project of Ikigai Studios, but also continue to encourage writing as an art form rather than just technical communication and organization. Writing does have those, but much like many other art forms, it has many tools, methods, styles, and interpretations to relay unique or inspirative ideas, thoughts, and designs. If you decide that this could be a new mode of thought in your writing, I do hope that this helped. And if you want to know us as a studio, well, this is part one of that in a way. The writing and directing part of the studio and how we think and try to talk about stories, both our own and others. Next up, you'll be introduced to the one who pretty much runs everything and has been actively uploading on and scheduling this channel and our studio's goals for the last year. In the next video, you will be meeting our producer and editor, Kevin, who will be discussing world building this neighborhood as well, but as a producer and editor. So, if you are looking forward to some of our original projects, a simple sub or like helps a lot, and I hope that this is something you will be looking forward to as we progress in our future. And until then, thanks for listening.